Story 1. I am named after my father. I love my father, but we are not alike. I have always felt that I do not have my own name. If I were to change my name, it would break his heart, so I have not. However, I dislike being called junior or younger. I am 47 years old. Story 2. It is fine, but I personally did not because I did not want him to constantly be compared to me or live in my shadow. I feel like having his own name is good for developing his own identity. Story 3. I am the fourth. I think it is kind of neat that my name goes back that far, and the person before me had two of the same names. I have never met a fifth, though. Story 4. My dad did not name me after him but gave me the same initials. It made it easier to use his credit card when I was a teenager. Thanks, Dad. Story 5. He is already going to have my last name, so there is no point in him having my first name. He is his own person. Also, my first name is such a monstrosity that I go by my middle name anyway. It needs to die with me. Story 6. To me, it comes across as more than a little vain. It is one thing to name your son after your father, your grandfather, brother, and so on. It shows love and respect for whoever you name him after. Naming him after yourself is like taking money out of his piggy bank to buy yourself a world's greatest dad mug. Story 7. My family passes down the middle name to boys, but I am not sure if I want my child to have my name. Gordon was passed down on my father's side and Alexander on my mother's side, but neither my brother nor I have these names. Story 8. Great question. I see it as narcissistic. I would never name my son after myself, but a woman has named our son after me. Story 9. I am named after my father, but I am not technically a junior, as our middle names are different. I love my name, but if I have a son, the line will end with me. There are not enough nicknames for it, and it could get confusing. Therefore, if I have a son with my fiancée, we will make my name his middle name instead. Story 10. I think it is a good idea if you are a man of note. Personally, my wife said she thought it would be too weird calling her son and her husband by the same name, so I agreed. My boy's name is very similar to mine. Same first letter and similar cadence of naming, but it does not rhyme. Story 11. I do not want children, but if I did, I would not name them after me. I do not like my name. I would give them a traditional Italian name. I am not so important that I think my son needs my name. Let him be his own person. Story 12. This can cause many complications as he grows up. Too many accounts are tied to a person's name. My little brother has my father's name as his middle name. That is fine. Story 13. I am named after my father. He did not do it as an egotistical thing. He said that his name was the only thing he owned in life at that time and he wanted to give it to me. I passed my middle name to my son, and he has his own first name. Story 14. I'm a junior myself. It is no big deal either way. Although my dad goes by the diminutive name, I go by the more formal one, which confuses some people. Story 15. It is egotistical and narcissistic. On top of that, you remove a bit of the child's own identity. It is not the biggest deal in the world, but being dead set on it is strange to me. Then what, they are known as junior. Not to mention issues that may arise with credit bureaus and other matters. Having the same names living at the same address can cause confusion. Story 16. I have no problem with it per se, but we did not give my son my exact name. We just reversed my first and middle names. That way he kind of has my name, but really it is his own. I got the idea because my parents did that with my older brother. Story 17. I am not named after myself, but after my grandfather. As a result, every one of my high school friends thought it was very funny that my full name in reverse order is my father's full name. Therefore, I am wondering if I should name my future son after my father and turn this into a kind of generational tradition. Story 18. If I ever had a son, he would get my middle name. All the men in my family have the same middle name. I wouldn't have a junior simply because of the difficulties I experienced as a kid. I live through it now but wouldn't want my child to go through that. Story 19. I have a firstborn son. I also have a very common, unremarkable first name. I never really thought about it. The world already has plenty of people with my first name. I gave him a name that is not very popular but also not strange or unfamiliar. He does have a solid last name which he gets from me. That is the best I can do. Story 20. I would want to ask him what name he wanted to have when he was old enough and refer to him as the child until that time. Story 21. Being a junior myself, I have always been extremely proud to be named after my father and share that with him. That being said, when my son was born, adding the third to the lineage seemed silly. I did, however, give him my middle name as it is a pretty unique name with significant history and is on its 8th generation in my family. For what it is worth, my daughter's middle name is recycled from our families as well. It is shared with significant women on both mine and my wife's side of the family, and someday, when she is old enough to understand how important those women were to our collective family, I think she will appreciate where it came from. Story 22. I would never do it to my child because my parents did it to me and I hate it. It is not even a strange name. Story 23. Seems self-centered and egotistical on my part. You have decided to bring another whole human being into this world. He does not need your name, nor does it help anyone. Story 24. Unless I badly need heirs to carry on the family name and business, it is a burden with high expectation. If I just live a quiet, peaceful life, I would rather not name my children after me. Story 25. My advice is do not. If your son grows up selfish, he can damage your credit and worse. I know because I watched my grandfather go through that with my uncle, his son. Both have the same name and birthday, just different years. Nothing but problems. My uncle never uses junior because he does not want to be a junior. Also, he just does not care. Story 26. It is my family's tradition to name the firstborn son's firstborn son the same name. I have added to that tradition by including a second first name for more individuality, and I intend to do the same with my son. I do not see it as naming them after me or our forefathers, but as something to bond over through the generations. Story 27. I would choose the other character my name is associated with so he would not have to live with a mispronounced name. Alternatively, we could use a different name with the same first 3 letters and share a nickname. Story 28. It either screams, I am insecure, or I am living in 1890 and I come from old money. Mostly the former. The child always lives in the shadow of the father. Story 29. It's quite common in Ireland. You would usually put an OG after the son's name. For example, if the dad was called Sean and you named your son after yourself, he would be called Sean OG. OG means young in Irish, so he would be young Sean. I've also known a few Mac Daras. Dara would be the dad's name, and you put Mac in front of the son's name. Mac means son of in Irish, so the son's name means son of Dara. Story 30. I have the same name as my dad, but a different middle name that starts with the same letter. Basically, our initials are the same. My younger brother has the same initials but a different first name, with the same middle and last name as my dad. Dad has taken my presidential vote before. I have accessed his credit score, and it is a bit messy. I guess many systems do not pay attention to middle names or social security numbers. Story 31. He is not me. I want him to be better than me. I do not need to inflate my own ego by naming my son after myself. Story 32. I think it indicates insecurity when the first person uses that name. However, after the first repetition, it is not as bad and can become a legacy, assuming your family actually achieves something worth celebrating. Story 33. Give your son his own name and legacy to create. Your son is not the prince of your kingdom. He is his own person. He should have his own name instead of being called Junior and living in your shadow. It is egotistical and lazy. Story 34. I did not do it. My father did not do it. I do know many men who have the same name as their father, though. I do not really care either way. Story 35. A little different perspective than the general thread. I am the third and my son is the fourth. We would have been fourth and fifth if great-great-grandfather had the same middle name, but his was James and my son's is Joseph. I did not name my son after me. It was more after my father and grandfather. who were and are both great and respectable men devoted to and loving their families. Our name is an older name, but it is not common in modern times. Growing up, I remember thinking it was unusual that no one else had my name, but it also made me feel special because it felt unique to our family. It was less about naming him after me and more about keeping the tradition alive. My wife was fully supportive when we first found out we were having a son. Story 36. When I wanted to have children, I thought the idea of having a junior was cool. I knew a few growing up, and it was the coolest thing to me. I no longer want children, nor do I have any, but I still think it is a cool thing. Story 37. Men who have done something worthy of a legacy do not need a son to carry their name. Most men who want a son to bear their name are taking the lazy route to a legacy. Story 38. I can understand a middle name that has been passed down for generations, but to randomly name your child after yourself is extremely narcissistic in my opinion. Story 39. Give little homie his own name. That is what my father did. Otherwise, I would have been the fourth. If you really want your name in there, make it the brother's middle name, I would say. Story 40. It is okay to do it, but I have had issues because my father's work and credit history were on my credit report. Story 41. Children should have their own names. Giving a family name is fine, but using juniors, seconds, thirds, and so on is not appropriate. My grandmother named my mother after herself and then criticized my mother because of it. If the first name matches someone else's, then the middle name should be different. Story 42. I was named after my father, who was named after his father, who was named after his father. My father and grandfather were flawed individuals. I struggled to overcome the challenges they faced and vowed not only to end their style of fatherhood but also to end the name. I felt it was better not to name my son after me. My son is not named after me. Story 43. I am the fourth person with my name. I never really considered the ego aspect of it, which is a valid point. I will likely continue the tradition. The only downside I can mention is male confusion as I got older and started receiving my own bills and other items. Story 44. It's strange. I have a family naming convention, mainly because I am not very creative and want to honor family members. My first children were going to be named Anna Katrina, after my ex's mother and sister, and William Alexander, after my grandfather and my middle name, which was my great-grandfather's name. It has always been like this. First names can be new, but middle names usually honor another family member. Story 45. I am named after my dad. The whole name. For the most part, it has never been an issue, but one time while I was going to the doctor in the military, they called me by my dad's rank instead of mine. He had been out for years at that point and had never been to that base or hospital. It was a strange moment. I always went by my middle name, so every year I had to tell teachers and staff what to call me. I do not care as much anymore. I definitely was not going to name my child after me, though. I never wanted that for them. They are their own person. My wife also wanted to carry on her mother's naming convention of using names that start with the letter T, so that kept my name out of consideration. Story 46. Only if they share a birthday with me. My brother and father share a birthday. That is where I got the rule from. Story 47. Absolutely not. My dad hated his name to the point that when I was growing up, if someone at work called him by his legal name and not the nickname he gave them, he would throw a fit, ranting and raving when he got home. He went by a nickname his entire life rather than be called by his legal name, and he decided to give me the same name so that we could share the nickname. I grew up hating my real name too and went by a nickname my entire life, except for some jobs where I was not allowed to use it. I have learned to tolerate my legal name, but I still do not like it much, and having a name that my dad openly hated definitely did not do me much good in terms of self-esteem and mental health. I am not putting any of my children through something like that. Story 48. I have a son, and I gave him his own name. I am fine with middle names being memorials, but your first name should always be your own in the context of friends and family. I also tried to find names that were not exactly common when looking. I feel bad for kids born in the last couple of years named Liam. Story 49. So basically, my parents named my child? No thank you. I will be coming up with the name along with the child's mother, I guess. She did put in 9 months of work. It will be a shared conversation though. I have already picked out a boy's name and a girl's name long ago. Story 50. Back when I was younger, I was all about it. If I were to choose to have kids now, I would say no. Maybe my first name as their middle name, but no. My ex's father, brother, and nephew were all named the same. Fortunately, I called her father Mr. Last Name, and did not have much interaction with her brother, so there was not too much confusion. Story 51. I would outright refuse. I love my son. I hate myself. Also, my father is expecting the name of the son to be after him, so that is what I am thinking. Story 52. I am a third, so it seemed like it was always on the table to name a fourth. I remember people and relatives would always ask if we would continue the tradition. I thought it was dumb and that I would never do it when I was a teenager. I honestly probably would not have done it except for the fact that my father passed away only a few months before my son was born, so there was definitely some emotional weight influencing the decision. We call him Four. He does get annoyed when teachers, doctors, and camp counselors call him by our shared name, but he understands the difference between his birth name and his nickname. I also grew up with a nickname different from the name my father and I shared, though I mostly go by my given name now, except with family. Some days I do kind of regret the choice, but so far at 8 years old, my son still thinks it is cool that he is a fourth and has said he will definitely make his son a fifth. I am going to leave it up to his future self and future spouse to decide, but I will put no pressure on him either way. To those saying it is egotistical, I get it, and you are not wrong. My grandfather, whom I never met, was in all accounts probably a bit of an egotist, and my father definitely was. I do not think I am. I think it was more out of tradition, the love I had for my father, and the fact that his passing was still so fresh for us that we decided to give my son the name and make him a fourth. Story 53. It would just make things more confusing. One of us would have to be called by their nickname or by their second name, and it would lose meaning to give them a name we are not going to use. I would rather name them something else. Story 54. Cheesy legacy. Fortunately, with fewer landlines, when someone calls your house and asks for you or him by name, you do not have to ask, which one? Story 55. I find it arrogant to name your child after yourself regardless of gender. My colleague's wife recently had a baby girl, and her middle name is basically his first name. I am judging him harshly for that. Story 56. I can see why some people like it, but it is too much of a hassle. Hey Bill. Not you, Bill, little Billy Jr. I am not even going to touch the credit agencies. Story 57. Egotistical and shows a lack of imagination. Naming your child after an older or deceased relative is understandable. I was named after both my grandfather, my mother's father, and my great-grandfather, my mother's father, because I was the oldest of my generation. Everyone else was given original names, meaning names not used by other family members. Story 58. If I am currently king, then the monarchy needs continuity. In every other circumstance, it is an absurd, self-aggrandizing, weak male mindset. Story 59. My dad specifically did not want my brother or me to be named after him. My mom named my older brother his name just to spite him. It was not terrible, but I know it is confusing with mail and other things sometimes. I just would not want to worry about dealing with those issues. Story 60. As someone who never liked his name, that was never in consideration. Beyond that, it always felt a little strange, like I wanted them to be their own person, and they could never really be that. You know what is really strange to me? When you name your second or third son after yourself rather than your first. Story 61. When my wife and I were talking about getting married, I made a deal with her that if she took my last name, then I would not put pressure on naming our first son after myself. It has worked out well as I like the names we chose for our two boys. Story 62. I was named after my father, but did not name either of my boys after me. I never understood it other than as an ego thing. Story 63. Not a fan. You end up as Little Bill, Billy, or Bill Jr. your whole life. I think if you want to use your name for a child, make it their middle name, James William for example. Story 64. I have an extremely rare classical Latin name that I would not give to my son. I also happen to appear Latin American, so people in my everyday life often try to speak Spanish to me. I do not speak Spanish. Well, I suppose I kind of do, but I only learned it recently in my late 20s because it was required for my graduate program. I would not want my son to experience this constant annoyance in his life. Story 65. If I were to have a son, I would not want to name him after me. I feel he would be pressured to follow in my footsteps or impress me instead of being his own person. Story 66. No. I have seen enough issues from a cousin who only shares his father's first and last name. Extra documentation was needed to open a bank account, and extra steps were required to get a credit card. Health insurance claims while he was still under his parents' plan were a nightmare. Story 67. Several generations of my family name the firstborn son after the grandfathers. Paternal, maternal, last name. It is nice to have a connection to your past and your history. Story 68. I am the firstborn son of a firstborn son of a firstborn son. My firstborn son has the same middle name as the 3 generations before him. Since no one uses their middle name, it is a cute tradition. If it ends with him or continues, so be it. Story 69. I did. I am proud of my father, who did everything for me, starting with his name. I passed on the tradition and named my son as the 3rd. If he wants to continue, that is his decision. Story 70. I like my name, so I am not against it. Also, by lucky coincidence, most guys in my family have the same name. Whenever someone calls it out, about 10 of us answer. Story 71. I was named after my dad, but I chose not to continue it with my son. Partly because I have one of the most common first and last names ever, and also because I didn't want him to be known as little in family circles. My dad was big and I was little. I'm now 50 years old, and I'm still little. I hate that, so I gave my son freedom from that. Story 72. Obligatory. I am a woman. My husband is the 3rd, and my father is a junior. Both refuse to pass on their name. Both have suffered from being confused with their father or grandfather, especially when they were younger and living at the same address. They also had issues when trying to secure loans. Can get very confusing. If you are asking because you are thinking of naming your child after yourself, I urge you to consider the legal implications. Story 73. I personally would not do it, but I understand. Continuity between fathers and sons in believing in things like name legacy, language, culture, profession or trade, country, and moral causes is really important. That is one way of expressing it. Story 74. I would never do that. I am named after my parents, and because of that, people treat me like I am an extension of them instead of my own person. It is egotistical and dehumanizing. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.